Hey, this is Sal Sines with Engel & Volkers, your wealth and real estate advisor. I'm here with two of my dearest, gorgeous friends. Laura?
Thanks, Sal. My name's Laura Zolnikoff. I'm a trust and estate and civil litigation attorney at Velasco Law Group in Long Beach, California.
And my name is Elizabeth Gonzalez, and I'm with the Financial Architects, and I specialize in helping clients with life insurance.
Aren't they beautiful? So, what we're going to be talking about here is a subject that's near and dear to my heart. I've been a real estate agent for 17 years, helping my clients gain a lot of wealth. And through investments, through flipping or whatever. So what we're going to be talking about is how I can help them protect their wealth through trusts as well as life insurance policies so that they can fund the trust. And that's what we're going to talk about today. Elizabeth has taught me so much about life insurance. It's not like the old days of like you buy life insurance just in case you die. There are so many moving parts to it. I mean, it's true, right? That's what I thought it was. Now it can be used as an investment for kids. It can be helped to trust fund a trust. But we're going to be talking a lot about that today. And most importantly, what I really want to talk about is who you trust, who you work with matters. Qualified professionals like Elizabeth and Laura are who you must work with. Because otherwise what happens is, if you don't do your trust properly, if you don't fund your trust properly, if you don't have a trust, you're going to be talking to a litigator here and spending your money on lawyer fees. Really quick thing I want to talk about, and then we're going to get into these girls. 2.5 million people over the age of 30 die each year. 65% of them own at least one property. 95% of them do not have a living trust. No trust equals probate, and there is debts that are assets that must be paid. So we're going to talk about how you can trust them, how you can, protect them. So Laura, start it out.
Thanks, Sal. Yeah, as Sal mentioned, there are a lot of instances where people don't set up a trust or don't want to spend the money to set up a trust. And what ends up happening is their beneficiaries or heirs end up having to go to court, pay thousands of dollars in probate fees and attorney's costs, and all that just eats into what their children or heirs would have otherwise received. So it's really important that you set up a trust, that you fund your trust properly, and that all assets like life insurance policies are funded in the name of your trust so you can make sure it's distributed to everyone in the way that you want it to be distributed.
So let's talk about this. So this is something that Elizabeth taught me. What do you mean by funding a trust?
All right, well, funding a trust is where you actually set up your trust with an attorney. And then, because having a trust is the first step, right, Laura? It's
right.
The very first step. So you can have your property protected and your assets protected in the trust. But what happens if you pass away and your heirs don't have a way to continue paying that mortgage or taking care of those bills?
Like, for instance, you told me like the moneymaker dies. That's what it really comes down to, right?
Right,
is that
right.
what it is?
So let's just take that as an example. So you have a husband and wife, and they are married. The husband is the bread earner, or let's say the wife.
It's probably the wife nowadays. Hello.
Yeah, and so let's just say one of them passes away and the other person is a homemaker. All right, so the house is protected, it's in a trust, but now that homemaker has to go out and figure out how to continue paying that mortgage. So by funding that trust, we mean having the life insurance to cover that bread earner's income for at least 7 to 10 years. And that's kind of what we recommend, is that person gets an insurance policy with a death benefit that would allow their family to continue living their current lifestyle for the next 7 to 10 years. And if there's young children involved, we all know how expensive it is to raise children, whether, they're doing private lessons, tutoring. There's just an array of different activities out there. So funding the trust with life insurance is the number two, I should say, step, is getting the trust and funding it. So that's why, for me, it's absolutely critical to work with an attorney that understands the importance of funding it, because there are a lot of attorneys out there that just set up the trust, but it's not funded. So it's a great thing to work with someone that knows exactly the benefits of having life insurance to protect your family.
So I have a question about that, because I would think also too, the younger you are, the less expensive it is to get a life insurance policy that will fund this trust. Because again, there was over the age of 30, $2.5 million, and a lot of them are in their 30s and 40s. So I would think as you're younger, that insurance policy would be less expensive or easier to get.
Absolutely.
Because they have less health issues. Is that correct?
Absolutely, you couldn't be more correct. It's age and health. And when are we, the healthiest? When we're young. And age, you can't go back in time, right? You are as old as you are, and you can't change that, unfortunately.
Old as dirt over here. So Laura, now let's talk about what you do, because let's say, for instance, what are the different scenarios that you have found that cause litigation? Like for instance, what happens if someone, you've told me this, people, you set up their trust and you give them their, what do? You give them a folder and tell them this is what you need to do. What do you do?
Right, that's exactly how it works. So we set up their trust, we meet with them, and they tell us, we have this life insurance policy, we have a 401k, we have a retirement plan, and then we give them letters to send to those institutions so that the name on the actual policy is their trust or successor trustee in that capacity. But if they forget to do so, or if they forget to work with their life insurance agent and they pass away and it's just in their individual name, litigation starts. At a bare minimum, we have to go to court and obtain a court order confirming that it's an asset of the trust. And that defeats the purpose of a trust. The purpose of a trust is to avoid court interaction with your estate, with your heirs, and to prevent the incurrence of attorney's fees. So what we recommend always is if you have a broker or an agent like Elizabeth, you meet with them and discuss with them your trust and how you want things to be distributed on your mirroring assets. So I would recommend, if you were getting a trust with me, chat with Elizabeth about your life insurance policy. Let her know if you want it to be titled in the name of your trust or if you want your beneficiaries of your trust to be a mirroring beneficiary of your life insurance policy. But it's important to have all of that sorted out, because if it's not, it's either subject to probate or court action, even if you've set up a trust.
Well, and this is kind of a hard thing, but estimate. But what can those costs be if you had to give estimates? What are those what kind of costs can someone incur if they don't do this properly?
Right. It's hard to tell because it depends on if there's an objection to it.
Okay.
If there's no objection, it's a few $1,000s, and usually it's a pretty seamless process, but it does take multiple months to get through the court system.
Right.
Even when it gets through the court system, you have to then obtain a certified copy of an order, send it to the policyholder or financial institution, and hope that their legal team doesn't challenge it or need additional information. So the easiest way is just to do it the right way in the first place.
But most of the time, all I ever hear, because I work with them. I've handled several listings. They have wonderful to work with. By the way, Peter Sahin is the bomb. He's a great guy. I love him. Yeah. But there's objections, obviously. The ones that I'm dealing with are objections where brothers are fighting, and they can only, and sometimes people think that these fights happen because there's lots of wealth or lots of property. It can be over one home. One home. And their legal fees eat up every bit of money they have, and they start out like this one client. He started out with like $250,000. At the end of the day, because he chose not to have a lawyer, he chose to represent himself. He chose to not work with a professional. He ended up walking with like $35,000 at the end of the day because he ended up having to pay his brother's lawyer fees. He ended up they did everything wrong. So by doing it correctly, they would avoid all that, right?
Right, exactly. And usually there is an objector. A lot of families have one child who's on the outs or disinherited, but if you don't designate your trust as a beneficiary or your successor trustee as a beneficiary, then what happens is all the lawsuits and all the court fees are all of your children, even if you didn't want one to receive. And so that's usually where objections come from and how litigation ensues.
Right.
And the problem with this is you have to prove by clear and convincing evidence that whoever the decedent was really meant for this one asset to be in the name of their trust. And most times people don't have that information because they haven't spoken with an agent or they haven't changed their beneficiary designation forms. So it's probably one of the most common disputes I see.
And one of the things I wanted to also mention is that you can set up your beneficiary as your trust. So your trust can be the named beneficiary on your life insurance. I just recently did work with a client who wanted to put their beneficiary as the trust, and we did that. So it is possible. So if you are working with someone out there that says you can't do that, it is absolutely possible to do that, just so you know.
Well, one thing I also learned about Elizabeth, she's a broker, so you can service a wide range of clients, correct? And that's what's really important with it, because sometimes people don't set up their trusts until they're older.
Yeah.
So can you still help someone set up a trust? Like, let's say they have diabetes or something.
For life insurance? Absolutely.
For life insurance.
Yes. I can work with, I have access to over 50 different carriers nationwide and all ages. It just really depends on your needs and your goals for your policy. You know, is it just to cover your final expenses? A lot of clients with what happened over the last year and a half realize that we just never know. So making sure that you at least have your final expenses covered is really, really important. So anything from setting up college cash accumulation accounts for your kids, final expenses, or tax-exempt retirement plans. There's an array of ways to set up your life insurance. It really just depends on you. If you have any kind of ailments, diabetes, we have special carriers that actually do insure people who are diabetic or even have heart conditions, believe it or not. It just depends on what your needs are and how much coverage you want.
We already talked about the most common problems that you see when a person fails to trust that. Did we already talk about, kind of tapped into some of that a little bit? But like, is there anything that you would say, what would be the number one thing that you would say someone should do if they they own a home? What would you tell them to do? Would you have them to call, and what would you tell us what you would have to do?
Well, I would have them fund their trust. That is the number one thing. I would make sure that the deed reflects the name of their trust. And it's also important, we were speaking about this earlier, that you have a good team of professionals and advisors. A trust attorney knows, a little bit of information about certain policies, 401k plans, beneficiary designations, but we're not financial institutions ourselves.
Right.
So we know the law and we know what you need to do. But the actual policies, we don't really know how to manage to ensure total compliance with their internal policies.
Mm-hmm.
So it's important that you have a good team who knows, like a broker or an agent that you can chat with, who can reach out to your attorney and they can have a cooperative effort. You want to make sure that your trust is as airtight as possible so that you avoid the court system at all costs. And that only ensures that your kids or your heirs receive as much as possible.
There's one thing I forgot. This is what I want to bring up. So I'm sure, because Laura is my go-to girl for trust. When I have found that 90%, maybe that percentage is a little high. When people go to like the discount brokerages, or they go to some lawyer, or they do something that they think is they're speaking to their family lawyer, who is family. They're real estate lawyers, some of them. I mean, it's crazy. And they write up a trust, and almost every single time I've ever had anybody, I've showed you when there were holes in their trust.
Right.
These were not put together correctly. Now, that's the one thing I got to say about Velasco Group. It's a one-stop shop. They do litigation. What do you guys do? Tell us more about what you guys do, your whole scope of services.
Right. Well, that's what's unique about Velasco Law Group is that we offer estate planning with certified estate planning specialists,
Yes.
meaning Paul Velasco and Peter Sahin, and they are the experts
Awesome.
on estate planning. They're going to help shore everything up so that even if you do end up in litigation, it's going to be an easy fix because they're so qualified and their expertise is really respected by the courts. But beyond that, if you need estate administration, so when somebody passes away and you find yourself in the position of being a trustee, you need help. You don't know what to do and what California law requires of a trustee. And most time people name their oldest child as the trustee who, likely doesn't have legal experience in this area. And so we also guide a trustee through that process.
Fabulous.
And my area of expertise is when all of that goes wrong and a dispute occurs, and usually it's between siblings, I go to court and advocate for my client's interests.
There you go. So again, most law firms don't litigate. I've asked that question to, I can't even tell you how many probate attorneys I've met over the last 17 years. Do you guys do litigation? He goes, no, we don't do litigation. obligation. All they do is the paperwork, and then that's it.
Right, and that's what's unique about Velasco Law Group is that we are a one-stop shop, and because I have at the ready Paul and Peter, who I can lean on for certain questions when it comes to planning, it strengthens our litigation department, and vice versa. We're able to plan anticipating potential litigation problems.
Fabulous, fabulous,
Yeah.
fabulous, fabulous. It's
I wanted
awesome.
to touch on something that Laura
Yeah.
said is she mentioned 401ks, retirement plans.
I was going to talk about that with you right now.
Yeah.
Well, actually, there's two things. You're incapacitated. What is that? The death benefit money situation. That I've never heard of such a thing.
Yeah, one thing that most people have never heard of is living benefits. Generally speaking, when people think of life insurance, they think about it when they pass away. About 10 years ago, the insurance carriers updated how they worked and operated, and they started offering living benefits. And living benefits are benefits that can kick in if you ever become incapacitated. So if you ever have a heart attack, stroke, cancer, 39.5% of men and women will be affected with cancer in their lifetime. And so any of those diagnoses where you're incapacitated, you're actually able to accelerate the death benefit. What that means is that you can take your death benefit amount and they'll accelerate an amount to you on a monthly basis until you recover or you reach your maximum death benefit. That's so important. And I get a lot of people who tell me, yeah, I have insurance, I've had it for years. Well, if you've had it for years, you probably don't have living benefits. And if you have it through work, I guarantee you don't have living benefits through work because these benefits are not included in group policies.
I've never. Have you ever heard of that before? Have you heard of that?
Well, it's interesting that Elizabeth brings this up because that's another aspect that we advise our clients on why it's important to have a team. Because if you are incapacitated, a lot of times your trust has a provision that nominates a conservator or somebody to make decisions for you should you be unable to. And that's very expensive because when you are subject to a conservatorship, you're appointed court-appointed counsel who gets paid for from your estate. And you're also your representative is also having to pay their attorney's fees from your estate. So having a team and an agent who knows about accelerating death benefits so you can get them while you're living but incapacitated is really important so that your estate can be carried out the way that you really want it to.
Say Brittany.
Right. You don't want to be left voiceless.
And it's really, really important because in the living trust, you have a medical directive. So the medical directive is something that, is so important because if you are incapacitated and you're on a ventilator, you can't speak. You need someone to be able to accelerate those benefits on your behalf. And how would they do that? They would use the medical directive that you got set up through your trust.
Right, and so when we do a trust at Velasco Law Group, we typically do a whole slew of documents. We do a trust and what we call a pour-over will, which in case you forget to fund anything, that's the document we go to court with and say, look, Sal really meant to include his life insurance in his trust, please confirm it. We do an advanced healthcare directive, which communicates to doctors, other people, your medical wishes, and a durable power of attorney, which would allow your agent to contact your life insurance agent to say, look, Sal really needs his death benefit accelerated so that we can pay for his care right now. So all of these documents are extremely important to ensure that your wishes are carried out.
And so that your money's not eaten up in courts and lawyer fees and things like that. So that's what this is all about. So, sorry about that, ladies. So, I think we've kind of covered pretty much everything. So, name and phone number and how they can get in contact with you, Laura?
Great. So you can call Velasco Law Group. Our phone number is 562-432-5541 and just ask for Laura.
And you can reach out to me directly, Elizabeth, at 714-600-2509, or you can also go to my website at protectmyfamilynow.com.
Or I'm Sal Signs with Engel and Bolkers. And if you have any questions about anything we've been going through today, asksalnow.com. AskSalnow.com. Plug in the question. Say, hey, I'd like more information about trust. I'd like more information about funding my trust. If you have any questions, it's really easy. Again, asksalnow.com. And I got to get a quick plug to Scotty. Get over here, Scotty. Get right into my. This is Scott. Sit right there.
Hey, guys.
This is Scott. He is my new buyer's agent. Oh, I like that. Hey guys. He is my buyer's agent. We've been friends for how many years?
25 years.
25 years. And he is amazing. He specializes in working with first-time home buyers, grants, down payment assistance programs. We're here to help you, serve you, and make you wealth. Other than that, does anybody have any comments?
Thank you so much, Sal, for putting this together.
Oh,
I'm
God.
really excited. And just for those of you who may not know Sal, he's an amazing person with a huge heart, and he knows so much about real estate, because when you're working with someone that knows what they're doing, they're going to get you the right place and do it in the right way and work with all of the best people in the business.
I'm good at relationships too. That's how I got Paul liked me. That's how we got your property. He liked,
Yeah.
Right,
Yeah,
right.
yeah, he liked me.
So we're excited to collaborate. Laura, it's been a pleasure meeting you, and Sal, obviously, we're really excited to work together.
Oh, yeah.
And once again, keep in mind that it takes a village to make things work, and a team. So thank you so much for the
Who you
opportunity.
work with matters.
Who you work with matters, and
Thank
they're,
you.
and they're easy on the eyes. Thank you guys.
Thank
Bye.
you. Bye.